So now it's time to practice, not for as long as I would have hoped, our forgiveness practice. And we can't forgive until we're ready and willing. And even then, we've got to take these baby steps to ease ourselves into the process with kindness, compassion, and equanimity. As I said before, for this series of meditations, I would suggest just closing your eyes and letting the words and intentions flow over you. And at the same time, let them sink in for future recollection and use. If you do today intend to use real life instances of harm, then it's strongly recommended that we practice with just small hurts, small slights, petty betrayals, minor abuses, just to practice as much as to heal those specific hurts, but to practice so we can get skilled at this and we can move up to those bigger hurts, those major hurts from the past. So if you're not working with real instances of harm, then I suggest you just close your eyes and let the words and intentions sink in for future recollection and use. The first direction of forgiveness in this practice is to acknowledge the harm that we've caused to other people. Acknowledge the hurt that we've caused to other people. And we're not so much asking for their forgiveness as forgiving ourselves. Cultivating this heartfelt regret for our actions. So we can start by reciting the phrases, I ask you for forgiveness for whatever harmful things you have done. For whatever harmful things I have done. The mistakes, the failures, and the wrongdoings that I intentionally or unintentionally did with my body, with my words, or with my heart. I now remember how I harmed you by taking what you did not freely give to me. Or perhaps I harmed you by withholding that which I should have rightfully given to you. My actions born out of my desires, out of my anger, out of my fears, out of my confusion and not knowing. But that was who I was then. It's not who I am now, and it's not who I will be in the future. You have nothing to fear from me today. For the thoughts, for the words, and for the acts of pain that I have inflicted upon you, I'm sorry. And I forgive myself. For the harm that I caused you, knowingly or unknowingly, I'm sorry. I forgive myself. For the sorrow that I caused you, I'm sorry. I forgive myself now. And just take a deep breath in and out through your heart center. Let yourself feel your sorrow and regret for your actions. As we check in with our heart center, we might note those feelings that are there. Perhaps guilt, perhaps anger, perhaps conflict, shame, or even self-hatred. But possibly with this practice, you might find surrender or a skillful remorse, or maybe some other release. What would it be like to let go of the self-view of offender, the self-view of thief? What would it feel like to drop our personal stories and narratives, to drop our personal identities, these negative identities? Remember, we don't have a fixed, permanent, unchanging self. We are an ongoing process, a great unfinished self. So is it possible to let go of guilt and shame? The second direction of forgiveness is forgiveness for ourselves, for all the hurt and harm that we've inflicted on ourselves through our thoughts, through our words, through our words spoken or not spoken, and through our actions. As we continue breathing in and out of the heart area, and feel free to place your hand on your heart if that helps, we might silently recite to ourselves, I ask for and I extend forgiveness to myself for whatever harmful things I've done to myself. The mistakes, the failures, the wrongdoings that I intentionally or unintentionally did with my body, word or heart. I now remember how I harmed myself by taking from others what was not freely given to me. I remember how I harmed myself by withholding that which I should have rightfully given to others. I remember how I harmed myself by withholding that which I should have rightfully given to myself. And I remember how I let myself down through my thoughts, through my words, spoken or not spoken, and through my actions. My actions born out of my desires, out of my anger, out of my fears, and out of my confusion and not knowing. But that was who I was then. It's not who I am now, and it's not who I will be in the future. I now ask for, and I extend to myself, a full and heartfelt forgiveness. I forgive myself for not understanding, and I forgive myself for the mistakes of the past. For the thoughts, for the words, and for the acts of pain that I inflicted upon myself, I offer myself forgiveness. For the harm that I caused myself knowingly or unknowingly, I offer myself forgiveness. And for the sorrow that I caused myself, I offer myself forgiveness. I wholeheartedly forgive myself. Taking a deep breath in and out through your heart, let yourself feel your sorrow and regret for your actions. Check in with your heart center. Notice the feelings that are there. Resistance, conflict, blockages, guilt, shame, anger, hatred. Because what we're looking for, what we're trying to cultivate here is surrender. A sense of relief. That's who I was. It's not who I am, and it's not who I intend to be. So maybe you'll find some relief. Maybe you'll find some release. In these instances, we are both the perpetrator and the victim of our own actions. Mindfulness means to remember. And what needs to be remembered? Well, particularly remembering what is helpful, what is caring, what is wise, what leads to suffering, and what leads away from suffering. What would it be like to drop the negative self-identities and replace them with an attitude of kindness, to befriend ourselves? So we might remember a phrase used in loving kindness practice. May I love myself just as I am, right here, right now. The last direction of forgiveness is towards those who've hurt or harmed us, to those who've abused us, to those who've abandoned us. Of course, there are some hurts that are just so large, we may feel that we can never forgive them. But it's suggested that we place these hurts on the back burner and not let them overwhelm our practice. The Buddha suggested that the path to liberation, the path to freedom, is a gradual path. We should only take on that which we can work with. We only take on that which we can manage. So those of us who suffered the bigger wounds, the unforgivable hurts, we might simply set the intention that one day, with practice, with this Dharma practice, I have an aspiration that I will be able to forgive that person, that event. But right now, right here, I'm simply not ready. So having set that intention, I can let go of the expectation of where and when or how that forgiveness may come. We might start this stage of our forgiveness practice by just bringing forward into the present moment those small hurts, the small slights, the petty betrayals, the minor abuses. As we continue to breathe in and out through our heart, we can silently recite to ourselves, as far as I'm ready and as far as I'm able, I forgive you for whatever harmful things you have done, the mistakes, the failures, and the wrongdoings that you committed intentionally or unintentionally with your body, with your words, with your heart. I now remember how you harmed me by taking what I did not freely give to you. I remember how you harmed me by withholding that which you should have rightly given to me. Your actions born out of your desires, out of your anger, out of your fears, your actions born out of your confusion and your not knowing. I've carried the pain and sorrow of your actions in my heart for too long. And now I put them down. Now I set you free. Now I release you. You have nothing to fear from me. For the thoughts, for the words, and for the acts of harm that you inflicted upon me, I offer you my forgiveness. For the harm that you caused me, knowingly or unknowingly, I offer you my forgiveness. For the sorrow that you caused me, I offer you my forgiveness. I forgive you now. Take a deep breath in and out through your heart. Let yourself feel your pain and sorrow. Check in with your heart center to note the feelings that are there. Any resistance, conflict, blockages, maybe renewed anger, renewed hatred. It's even possible that we might feel guilt or shame because of someone else's actions. In which case, we must remember that this deserves kindness and self-forgiveness. Is it possible to let go of the identity of being a victim of these hurts? What purpose does holding on to these self-views hold? Does the self-view of victim still help, or does it now hinder? Has it served its purpose? Remember, we can forgive, but we do not have to forget. Forgiveness is not the same as reconciliation. We're not inviting people back into our lives. Forgiveness and justice can and should be applied together. Forgiveness is a process, not an event. And sometimes this is a very slow, gradual process that requires patience and courage. A gradual process that cannot be rushed, and it certainly can't be faked. When we let go of blame, shame, guilt, anger, we move away from clinging towards letting go. We move away from aversion towards love. We move away from confusion towards wisdom. We move away from avoidable suffering towards the ending of avoidable suffering. When we do this, we're taking another step closer to finding that perfect, unshakable liberation of the heart. A liberation from greed, a liberation from hatred, and a liberation from delusion. Okay. Forgiveness is the move from ill will to kindness, from reaction to response, from contraction to wholeness. If we can forgive, then we are letting go of anger, ill will, blame, resentments, judgments. And this is in effect a renunciation or a rejection or an abandonment, a breaking the spell, a becoming disenchanted with greed, with hatred and confusion. In holding with great care our pain, our hurt and our disappointments, in honouring our lost childhoods and our broken dreams, we can skillfully leave the past behind and move forward. We can take another step forwards towards the ending of suffering, another step closer to finding that perfect, unshakable liberation of the heart. A liberation from greed, a liberation from hatred, a liberation from confusion. St. Paul, the apostle, gave instructions to those who were followers of Jesus. He said, get rid of all bitterness, rage and anger, brawling and slander, along with every other form of malice. So, thank you all. I hope you've had a good day. I hope to see you all next week.